Can you imagine being fired from your job while suspended 200 feet in the air, with a 20-ton container dangling right below you? It sounds like a scene from a blockbuster movie, but for one crane operator, it was a terrifying reality. Today, we're diving deep into the story of what happens when workplace disputes go to extreme heights, literally. This isn't just about a job lost. It's about a split-second decision that could have ended in catastrophe. Let's set the scene. Picture a massive port, a maze of shipping containers stacked like building blocks. High above it all sits a crane operator, a lone figure in a glass cab, orchestrating a delicate dance of immense weight. The job requires nerves of steel, precision, and an unwavering focus. You're not just lifting boxes. You're responsible for millions of dollars in cargo, and more importantly, the lives of the people working below. The slightest miscalculation, a moment of distraction, can have devastating consequences. Our operator, let's call him Mark, had been doing this for over a decade. He knew the machine like the back of his hand, felt its every groan and shudder. It was a tough job, but it was his. One fateful afternoon, Mark was in the middle of a routine lift. He had a 20-ton container, filled with who knows what, hooked and ready to move. He was lifting it high, clearing the stacks, when the radio in his cab crackled to life. It wasn't the usual coordination chatter from the ground crew, it was his supervisor. The voice was cold, impersonal. "Mark, we're letting you go. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Come down now." Imagine the shock, the disbelief. Fired, now, in the middle of a critical lift. Mark's mind was racing. Was this a joke? A cruel prank? He radioed back, trying to get clarification. "You can't be serious. I've got 20 tons hanging here. I need to set this down safely." The response was chillingly simple. "That's no longer your concern. Come down." He was being ordered to abandon his post, to leave a massive weight suspended precariously in the air. This goes against every rule, every instinct, every piece of training he'd ever received. The number one rule is you never, ever leave a load hanging. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Mark was faced with an impossible choice. He could obey the order, descend the crane, and leave a 20-ton disaster waiting to happen. A gust of wind, a mechanical failure, anything could send that container crashing down. Or he could defy his now former boss and do what he was trained to do, secure the load. But what would happen then? Would he be arrested for insubordination? Trespassing? The company had fired him. Technically, he was no longer authorized to operate that crane. He was in a no-win situation, trapped 200 feet above the ground with the weight of the world, literally, in his hands. Let's pause for a moment and consider the pressure. The wind is whistling around the cab. The ground crew is probably looking up, wondering what the holdup is. His supervisor is on the radio, getting angrier by the second, and hanging from his cables is the equivalent of about 10 cars. His heart is pounding, his palms are sweating. What would you do? This is a classic ethical dilemma, but amplified by 1,000. Do you follow a direct order that you know is incredibly dangerous, or do you break the rules to prevent a potential catastrophe? It's a test of character under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Mark tried to reason with his supervisor. He explained the protocol, the safety regulations, the sheer insanity of what he was being asked to do. "Just let me set this down on the stack. It'll take 2 minutes, then I'll come down." But the supervisor was unyielding. The argument escalated over the radio, the tension rising with every transmission. The supervisor threatened to call security, to have him forcibly removed. For Mark, it felt like the world had gone mad. He was being punished for trying to do his job safely. The very people who had trained him on these safety protocols were now ordering him to violate them in the most reckless way possible. After several tense minutes of back and forth, something inside Mark snapped. The frustration, the anger, the sheer absurdity of the situation boiled over. He felt disrespected, discarded, and put in an impossible position. And then he made a decision that would echo through the entire port and become the stuff of legend. He looked down at the empty stretch of concrete, a designated safe zone where no one was supposed to be. He took a deep breath, and he released the load. The 20-ton container plunged 200 feet, For a few seconds it was in freefall. The sound was deafening. A thunderous crash echoed across the port as the steel box slammed into the pavement. It crumpled like a soda can, the impact sending a shockwave that people felt a quarter-mile away. The crane lurched violently as the weight was suddenly released, throwing Mark against the side of his cab. Down below, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. People were shouting, running, not knowing what had just happened. For a moment, a plume of dust and debris obscured the impact site. Mark just sat there, shaking, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had just intentionally dropped a 20-ton container. It was the ultimate act of defiance, the most destructive way of saying, "You wanted the load off my hook? There, it's off." He knew his career was over. He knew he'd face serious consequences. But in that moment of rage and desperation, it felt like the only way to make a point, the only way to resolve the insane standoff he'd been forced into. He had ensured no one was underneath, but the act itself was a monumental breach of every safety rule in the book. Slowly, carefully, he began his descent. The long climb down the steel ladder felt like an eternity. Every step was heavy. He could see security and management gathering at the base of the crane. He knew what was waiting for him. When he finally reached the ground, he was met not with questions, but with handcuffs. He was arrested on the spot. The story, as you can imagine, spread like wildfire. Crane operator fired mid-air drops 20-ton load. It sounds unbelievable. So what happened next? The legal battle was intense. The company pursued charges of reckless endangerment and destruction of property. Their argument was simple. He was a disgruntled employee who acted maliciously. They claimed their order to come down implied that he should have secured the load first, even though their explicit words were, "That's no longer your concern." Mark's defense, on the other hand, painted a very different picture. They argued that he was put in an impossible situation by a negligent supervisor, that releasing the container in a designated safe zone, while extreme, was a direct result of being ordered to abandon a live, suspended load, which was an even greater danger. His lawyer argued it was a desperate attempt to mitigate a crisis created by management. The case brought up a huge debate in the industry about workplace safety and the responsibility of management. Can you really fire someone in the middle of a critical, dangerous task and expect them to just walk away? Where does the employee's responsibility for safety end and the company's begin? Many of Mark's fellow operators, secretly and sometimes openly, sided with him. They understood the pressure. They knew the golden rule: never leave a load in the air. They saw his extreme action as a protest against management that had lost touch with the realities of the job site. Ultimately, the outcome was complex. While Mark avoided a long prison sentence, he lost his operator's license for life. The financial cost from lawsuits and fines was enormous. He would never sit in the cab of a crane again. The supervisor was also fired, and the company faced massive fines from safety regulators for their role in creating the dangerous situation. There were no winners here. A man lost his livelihood, and a company's reputation was left in tatters. The story of the crane operator who was fired mid-air serves as a shocking, almost unbelievable, cautionary tale. It highlights the critical importance of communication, respect, and clear-headedness in high-stakes environments. When tensions flare and egos get in the way of safety protocols, the consequences can be earth-shattering. It's a stark reminder that behind every massive piece of machinery is a human being, making decisions under immense pressure. And sometimes, pushing them too far can cause them to drop everything. What do you think? Was his action justified in any way? Or was it a purely reckless act of anger? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into incredible events. See you next time.